I am Mark Morris, and I'm a choreographer, and I'm a sometimes opera director, and I'm a sometimes conductor, and I work in music. The three big ballets that Tchaikovsky wrote, I used to think that Sleeping Beauty was the weakest one, and that's only because I'd heard it in terrible editions with lots of missing music and horrible tempi and very often really bad choreography to make the music sound worse. But then a number of years ago, I saw the Mariinsky Ballet in a revival of as close as they could get to the original full-length production, which was endlessly long, 3 intermissions, I think, music I had never heard. I heard Nozeda conducting for the first time, and it was one of the great musical treasures of my life. And I realized then that if all the music is in the right sequence and played beautifully, that it's one of the most astonishing dance scores imaginable, incredible in its reference to Renaissance and Baroque music, in its bizarre sort of internationalism, and the unbelievable, thrilling variations, and the music couldn't be better written for dancing. Stravinsky is a mandatory inclusion. The piece I'm selecting is Les Noces, the wedding, and it's astonishing for a lot of reasons. One, in the way that he incorporated folk music, which included fake folk music that he wrote that reminded people of various Russian musics. The singers aren't singing exactly a role. They're not singing a character's part. They're singing the lines that a character would say. So it's partly narrative and it's partly descriptive. And like in Schoenberg's great Moses und Aaron, the singers are used instrumentally as well as dramatically. Bela Bartok wrote a great, great ballet that is very, very rarely played and certainly not choreographed. I've never seen a dance to it. I'm sure there is one. And the piece is called The Wooden Prince. And this is a piece I was looking for full-length ballets that I didn't know, and a good friend of mine, name-dropping, the composer John Adams, suggested that I listen to this piece, it being one of his favorite pieces of music. I started some years ago the idea of choreographing this and doing a big giant project. The thing is, the band is approximately 100 players. It's an incredibly beautiful, difficult, noisy score, and it, like a lot of ballet scores, has a libretto of extreme idiocy. I was going to say simplicity, but the story is so dumb and so boring that one would have to, I think, completely revise the sort of tone of the story in order to make this unbelievably great score of music work in the theater. The one piece that I'm talking about, that I'm promoting, that I choreographed, is Romeo and Juliet of Prokofiev. The piece, originally, as he wrote it, has what is notoriously known as a happy ending. They don't die in the sense that they do in the Shakespeare, although Shakespeare often had alternate endings to the plays. Prokofiev was, well, let's say, taken off the project, and a whole bunch of horrible things happened involving Stalin, if that's scary enough. And the piece was never really restored until recently. The musicologist Simon Morrison found it in the archives in Moscow, the Prokofiev archives, and presented it to me, and I choreographed it. And there's not a lot of new music, but a lot of the music is more gently orchestrated, the sequences are different, and it has this amazing Christian Science ending that we're not really sure what happened. So Romeo and Juliet I would nominate as one of the 5 great ballet scores. Maurice Ravel's incredible piece, La Valse, which has a life as for two pianists, and which is the way I prefer it. But it's the most astonishing, psychedelic, terrifying, hallucinogenic miracle of a piece of music that starts as a waltz and remains as a waltz, but gets madder and madder and more dense and more upsetting and terrifying, just like you want a piece of music to do, especially if you're going to choreograph it. Also, Mr. George Balanchine was a very, very fine choreographer and made up a gorgeous dance, and so that helps.